Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Whether you're tuning in from Singapore or Philippines like Karen, or even from US like Mitali and Angelica, thanks for spending your Saturday afternoon or Friday night, Saturday midnight with all of us here. We are really excited to be having this meetup with speakers from all over the world. Yeah, literally. And welcome to Google Developer Space channel. And just to share a little bit more about what we do, we are a home for developers and startups from around the community to learn and connect with one another. And today's meetup is hosted by Go Singapore. So Teck Chun is one of the organizers, and they are really active. They host monthly meetups with us. And for today, it's part of the International Women's Day series that we are having. So we are collaborating with communities across Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. We have a total of currently up to 9 events, all featuring women speakers who are going to be sharing about the technical or soft skills. So do join us. We are really looking forward to this event and all the rest of the events coming up as well. So over to you, Teck Chun, to share more about today's session.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jasin. Thank you, Google Developer Space. Thank you to Stanley, Abel, and to our 3 speakers today. Thank you for joining us. So in celebration of International Women's Day, we got 3 female speakers today, and they are joining us from different time zones. Apologies for the hellish timing. Yeah, we have Mitali from California, Angelica from New York, and Karen is from a current time zone, is from Philippines.
Okay.
So welcome. We'll not hold back your talk, and without further ado, I'll let the speakers introduce themselves, starting with Mitali. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mitali. I'm a software engineer at JFrog. I have been working in software industry for the last 8 or 9 years, and I've always worked on Java. So obviously, Go is not my first language, but now I'm a gopher. Been working in Go for the past 2 years, and many more technologies. Let's see if I can give you some good stuff about Go today.
Okay, thank you, Mitali. Angelica, over to you.
Hi, I'm Angelica. I am a product manager at the New York Times, but I am an aspiring gopher who loves Go.
All right, thank you. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm a CTO at One Export, and I have been doing Go for 2 years now. And I'm excited to share about exporting your database to some formats or Excel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you once again for joining us. And thank you, Gophers, for spending your afternoon with us on Saturdays. And then let's go on to the first talk by Mitali. She'll be sharing with us about Go module versioning. And over to you, Mitali.
Thank you, Teck Chun. Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about Go module versioning evolution through today. I'm going to talk about how Go module has, the versioning system has evolved from Go 1.11 to 1.16, which is released in last February. And so a little bit about myself, as I already told, I'm a software engineer at JFrog, and now I'm a gopher. You can always reach me out at my Twitter handle, Engineer Mitali B, or you can connect me with LinkedIn if you have any question about today's talk or anything about Go or anything about anything else. We can always connect. So before going further, I'm going to, whether it's virtual or it's, real meetup, we always, get excited about the swag. So as part of JFrog, we are going to give one of the Go t-shirt. So you guys can scan the code here and you will be in the raffle, and one of the person will get selected and will mail the t-shirt to you. You will see this barcode at the end of my slide too. So if you don't catch it here, you can catch at that time. So let's get started. Before going further in my talk, I want to, this is a famous, I really like this saying before from Simon Sinek, which says that we say what we do as a software engineer, or any person. We say what we want to do, we get the requirements and everything, and then we come to the part how we sometimes say how we do it, how we want to implement it, or we already know how to do it, but we really say why we do it, why, which is actually the core part. We actually thought we really don't go much deep into that, or think about why we did what part is actually being done and how it is done. So in this whole presentation, which in this whole talk with each versions, I'm going to talk about what, how, and why part, like why all these things have been placed, and emphasizing more on the why part. So just to give an overview, we will be talking about Go 111 module versioning system, and then we will talk about what has been changed for pseudo versions in Go 113. And then in Go 114, what is changed related to the rendering. So if you are still using rendering, what has been changed in 114. And finally, in 116, what is there related to the module. So I'm talking a lot about, versioning and all those things, why we even need versioning. So if we think about this question, what comes to our mind? First of all, dependency management. Yeah, of course. I have a code, I'm building a code, and I have, there are a lot of libraries, especially for Go as an open source language. There are a lot of libraries, people are building around the world, and we can always use them. And even for the whether it's making connection to the database, or any utilities or anything. So I need to manage my dependencies. I need to see that whatever particular version of the code that is there, if I use that for over after 2 months or 3 months, it should give me the same result, and I'm able to reproduce my builds. Second is better software engineering. Software engineering happens when software developers collaborate with each other. That means they work on the same piece of code, which is not static, right? Code is evolving over the period of time. And so one software engineer who is working on one piece of code, how the other person knows that, okay, he or she is updated with the code, right? So in order to collaborate more. And also for the reproducible builds, obviously the person who is sitting here in California should be able to have the same piece of code built successfully than the person who is sitting in any other corner around the world. So it should be reproducible everywhere. So these are the main core components that we actually wanted in the versioning system in any of the languages. And so here, that's why Go has put some of the efforts to put it in place. So I'm not sure how many of you have actually worked on Go version 1.11 and before, but there was not any versioning system. That means Go tooling was not aware about how to get a particular Git tag. So whenever we do Go get, it actually gets from the master. It doesn't get. If we do Go get, we cannot actually give a particular Git tag or version that we want to get that particular version. And obviously, though there is no native dependency management system, there was not any formal dependency management. There were tools like Glide, GoDApp, which were there actually to manage your dependencies, but they were not, combined with the Go tooling. So to look all these problems, to solve all these problems with Go 111, Go has introduced the concept of module, and with the environment variable Go 111 module, it has three things, like you can put it on, you can put it auto, or you can put it off. So if you are put it in on, that means you want to run it in a module aware module system. If it is auto, that means your project is module aware. So if you have a go.mod file and you're out of Go path, then it will work. Then it will work in module aware mode. And obviously off, that means you don't want to work in module aware mode. So I'm talking about a lot about modules. So let's go into the what, how, and why part of this. First of all, what is a Go module? Go module is actually collection of packages which are in a file tree, and it has a go.mod file at its root. Now, how does the go.mod file looks like? This is a sample example. Go.mod file has a modules path at the first part. That here it's module github.com containers common. This is the full module path, and then it will have a Go version with which this particular module has been built, and then it will have a require directive. Require directive will have all your dependencies. That means module path of your dependencies. So as we know, Go uses the whole module path for the dependencies, for mentioning the dependencies. So here there is a module path for toml, and along with that there is a version. Now, Go prefers to have a semantic version as the versioning system. That means, what is semantic version? We know that it should be in the form of major.minor.patch. That means whenever there is an incompatible changes, we should bump up the major version. If there is any compatible changes, we should bump up the minor version. And if there is any bug fix for the minor version, then we should bump up the patch version. So that's how Go, and these are the release version, and these release version are being introduced in Go by tagging any version in your version control system. So that's how release version looks like. But that doesn't mean that you cannot have a pre-release version in Go. You can always define a pre-release version like this, using a hyphen at the end, and you can specify some string. So that's how whole Go module uh, go.mod file looks like, and that's how versioning are being defined for your dependencies. Now let's go to the why part. Why this versioning has been put this way, and how they are imported. So principle of module versioning for Go. Let's take an example. Suppose I'm working on a module A, and I have a dependency on module B, which has a function f1 of f1, which has a dependency on module D version 1.0.2, and I'm using that f1 function. Similarly, I'm using another. I have a dependency on another module C, which is using the same f1 function but of D, but of version 2.0.2. Now the question comes, which version of D should A refer, or should A import, whether it should 1.0.2 or 2.0.1. So in order to solve this problem, Go has defined the principle which is called as semantic import versioning, which actually says the two things, that all the modules should define semantic version. That means x dot y dot z. And also for major version, instead of whenever you are bumping your major version, you should include in your module path, which is, so this thing is called as import compatibility rule. So that means whenever you are bumping up your version from 2 or higher, you should include that in your path. For 0 and 1, this rule doesn't follow, as 0 and 1 is basically for the test and basic release. So that means, coming back to my example, now D will have a module path for 1.0.2 as D, but for 2.0.1, D will have dv2. Now A can import both D and both D/v2 and use both of the functions and will not have any problem. So here, that's how the major version has been put it into the place. Now going back to my mod file, if you see this particular kubernetes.io klog, it is using a major version 2.4.0, and if you see version 2 is there in the module path. Now with this, there are some of the problems that has come for the developer, is that whenever you want to bump any of your dependency version from version 2 and higher, you have to change it in your go.mod file manually, and also you have to change all the import path in all of your projects. So there is a little bit pain, but for that there are some of the tools which are available, like fix import and all other things that can be used to fix all those import path quickly. And also whenever you do go list, there is a little bit problem of discoverability of all the major versions. That means go list of Go tool will not list all the major version. It will only list all the minor version under a particular major version. So the only way we can discover a major version is actually going to the source location and do a couple of curl commands to see what all major version are there for that particular source location, because the key for all the major version is that their source location will be the same. Now the major versions are being fixed, but what about minor version and patch version? Are they still fine to import? So let's take an example. I have a module A and I have a dependency on module B, which in turn have dependency on module D of version 1.3.2. Similarly, I have another module dependency of C, which in turn has dependency of D of another version 1.4.8. And I also have direct dependency on D of 1.0.2. Now, D's latest version is 1.5.0. Now, according to the most of the language, whenever this kind of situation will come, latest will get imported. That means 1.5.0. But that is not true with the Go languages. In Go, there is a principle called minimal version selection that has been introduced that says that the module should import only the latest but not the greatest. That means the minimum version that is needed to actually build a particular module that will get imported rather than the latest one. So here, if I see, I will not have 1.0.2 because that will be too old for A, and 1.5.0 will be too new for A. So A will import 1.4.8 of the version. So that's how the minor version of Go has been fixed and has been put into the place, and it really helps to have all the versioning system in place properly. Now let's go further. Now Go 113 has come, and it was found that there was still some discrepancies floating around because of the pseudo version. So there are some things called pseudo versions that people use, and they were modifying through hand rather than Go itself to create it. And because of that, there was some problem in getting the reproducible build. So in order to correct that, in Go 113, Go has introduced some validation for pseudo versions. So now let's go to what, how, and why part of this. First of all, what is pseudo versions? Pseudo versions is actually the versions that are actually put into place whenever we want to develop against a particular project which doesn't have any released version, or whenever we have we have dependency on any project which has not been released. So in that particular cases, developer uses pseudo versions. How does that pseudo version looks like? So they looks like this big string. If you see, it has three components. First component says the most recent tagged version in the commit graph. Second component is the commit time in UTC, and third is the prefix of commit hash generated by the underlying control version system. Now, pseudo version practically should never be typed by hand. Go tool is aware of that, and whenever we tag any version, it automatically generates the pseudo version for you with the timestamp, with that particular timestamp. But there are some tools, or there are some outside tools, and people actually type them by hand, which was creating some discrepancy. So for example, this most recent tagged version in the pseudo version actually takes part in the minimal version selection, which I explained before. So if I modify this first part to any other, then it will actually mess up the whole ordering of the system and actually pin this particular pseudo version to your module, which might not be the latest. And also the second part, which is the commit time, that also take part in ordering of the pseudo versions. So which particular pseudo version is the latest one is being can only be tell by the timestamp. So if we change this timestamp, it again changes the whole ordering of the system. So because of all these problems, in Go 113, there were some restrictions that have been put. So now, what are those restrictions? First of all, the most recent commit graph, the whatever is the tag, it should whatever is there in the underlying version control system for the major. And second is the commit time. It should be commit time that is generated by the version control system. And third is the commit hash. It should be the same commit hash that is being generated by the Go tool. There was also other restriction, a pseudo version can have a plus incompatible suffix only if it is needed by the by the corresponding major version, and if it doesn't have a go.mod file. And this is true not only for pseudo version, any other versions. And also, last but not the least, is the checksum server validation, which was enabled in Go 1 from 113. So if you see along with your go.mod file, you would have seen a file called go.sum, which actually has a cryptographic hashes or cryptographic checksums of all your module dependent module versions. And the same hashes have been stored in a checksum server. So now with Go 113, whenever we do any go get command, whatever in there in your go.sum file, the checksum is being validated against whatever is there in the checksum server. And if it doesn't matches, it will not allow you to get that particular version. So let's see how these changes have come into effect. So before 113, if you do a go get on any particular pseudo version which is actually not the correct one, and that means if you see in this example, I have actually changed the timestamp. So what it used to do, it used to get the latest for that particular major version and pin that particular module, pin that particular pseudo version in your go.mod file, which is actually the wrong pseudo version. But after Go 113, if we try to do with a wrong pseudo version, then it will give us an error saying that the maybe the timestamp doesn't matches, or the checksum is invalid, and these kind of problems, these kind of errors, we can start seeing them. Now, how to solve this if you have any invalid and not good pseudo versions? So we have to fix our pseudo versions in our direct dependency. So if you have any in your direct dependencies, and also any in your transitive dependencies. So for direct dependencies, we can use require directive. So instead of putting the whole pseudo version, we can only put the last commit hash part. And when we run go mod tidy or go get, go tool will automatically get the correct pseudo version and pin it to your module. And similarly for transitive dependencies, we can use the replace directive instead of require. So if any of my dependencies has incorrect pseudo version, we can do the same thing, use the replace directive and use only the commit hash part, and then we can successfully build all our incorrect pseudo version in Go 113 and above. Now let's move further. Now comes Go 114. So in Go 114, it was vending was given preference over the module cache. Before that, there was a module cache which was being maintained, and whenever we do go get or anything, it used to refer to the module cache. But from Go 114, if you define go 1.14 in your mod file, and if you enable and if you have a vendor directory, that it will always look in your vendor directory for your dependencies rather than in your module cache. Now let's go to what how and why part of vending. First of all, what is vending? Most of the people, what they do, they don't want to there are many reasons actually to maintain a copy of your dependency inside project. That means whatever libraries you are using, you are having a full copy of all the code in your local, and then you build it rather than having in any central repository. This was being heavily used before Go module was introduced, but after Go module, it has subsidized it. Now let's see why we need vending. We need vending. Maybe we have a fear that no. First of all, I have some of the dependency and I want to change any code in my dependency to debug something. So the only way is that to take that particular code in my local and debug that. So for that, we can always use replace directive. We can use replace directive in our go.mod file and have that, and download that just for time being, and then debug it, rather than putting it in our Git repository, the whole code of our dependency. Second is, it might be possible that VCS is down. There is networking issue, or dependency might appear, especially for this open source language. There might be author who can just pull out the module and it will not be there. Or if the dependency is using VCS other than Git, then what are the options we have? So for that, we can always use Go proxy. There is a Go proxy package. There's a public Go proxy there. We can always define in there, and we can have it cached there. Once it is cached there, it will never disappear. Also, there might be cases when we are thinking about mutability. It can change, that there is some piece of code of the same version which was there and now it is not there, it has changed. Or if we have to build without a network, there are some of the companies that doesn't allow to go outside the network. So in that case, we can use private Go proxy rather than the public one, like Artifactory. And in Artifactory, we can have both public and private modules. Now, what is the usage? Also, when we don't have all these dependencies in our local, then obviously it saves the space. And also we will have cleaner commit logs, because we will not have commit logs of all those dependencies. Obviously our whole code will shrink it down to the smaller one. So now we should think that whether we should still use the vending or not. So it's up to us. But module has since module has come, it has subsidized all these problems to use it in a better way. Now, last but not the least, recently in February, Go 116 has introduced. Before that, Go 11 module was always made to auto. That means whenever you are working in a Go language, and whenever you're working in a module, it is if you have a go.mod file, it will always work in module aware mode. But with Go 116, it will be by default be on. That means it will always be on. And there are some good features that has been coming to Go 116. So say, since Go 116, Go install will be using versions along with the module path. Before 116, Go install was using always the module path. That means you can always get the latest, but not a particular version. But with Go install, we can now get a particular Git tag. So since Go install has been introduced with the version, Go get is going to get deprecated for build and install. That means now we should be using Go get only to download or build our dependencies, not to actually install them. And if you are doing that, maybe you should start moving away from it if you are using the module, and start using Go install for that. Also in Go 116, Go mod vendor and Go mod tidy will have a -e flag enabled. And there are some of the good directives that has been introduced. First is retract directive. Retract directive is nothing but whenever sometimes an author release some particular version that he or she thinks that is not good, or it has some vulnerability issue, or it has some kind of or its mod file is not good, and they don't want other people to use that particular version. So they can always use this retract directive and put that particular version with some comment like broken go.mod file. So other people will be able to see that and will not be using it, and Go tool is also aware of that. Also, there is a new feature, Go embed has come. Finally, in Go, we can use the static files, right, to embed like our HTML's file using this Go embed directive. And last but not the least is exclude directive. So exclude directive was always there before, but what it used to do, it never, whatever particular version that we have defined in our exclude directive, what it used to do, it used to get the next latest version for that, and that used to break the builds. But now from Go 116 forward, it will just ignore that particular version, and it will not use any other version in replace of that. So that's how we see how Go has evolved from 111 to 116 a lot. And there's a latest surveys that says that most of the people from Go packages has moved to Go module, like 97% people. So if you have not moved, you should move it now, because from 116 module is on for auto. So that's it from my side. If there are any questions, feel free to ask me. And again, my Twitter handle is there, my LinkedIn, and there's again a code for a cool gopher t-shirt. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mitali. Thank you. That was very informative talk. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Section.
Thank you. Let me see if there's any questions posed on the talk. It appears to be none for now.
Hey Mitali, I think Teck Chun might have dropped off, but
Yeah.
seeing his kid was at the background. But thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing and also giving everybody a heads up about what precautions they should be taking and moving to the module. That I think that's all we have for now. I think
Okay.
earlier you were sharing about the JFrog t-shirt. If you
Yes.
want to just share the link in the comments again, that would be great.
Yep. I'll share that in the comments too.
Yep. Okay. If we have any more, if anyone is tuning in and you want to ask any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments. I think Mitali will be able to also address them in the comment section.
Okay.
I see Teck Chun is back. Hey Teck Chun.
All right.
Do you have any questions for Mitali?
Not from me. Yes, not from me. Not to hold back also from the rest. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mitali. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you,
All right.
Teck Chun. Thank you, Jia. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next up with Angelica.
Hello, everyone. So firstly, I'd just like to thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this event and really privileged to be speaking alongside such brilliant other Go women. So hi, my name's Angelica Hill, and today I'm hoping that I'm going to convince you all that anyone can be a gopher. But first, a little about me. So I'm currently an associate product manager at the New York Times. I work on our Mercury messaging team, building the backend infrastructure for our newsletters, emails, and push notifications. I work predominantly on this in-house messaging platform. We're made up of microservices. We work on GCP. And of course, we're written in Go. I'm a Londoner and a lover of Shakespeare. I've been at the New York Times for about 3 years, and I've been a gopher for about 1.5 years. Before that, I went to Columbia Journalism School and got my master's focusing in cybersecurity, policing, and counterterrorism. Before that, I did my major in English literature and drama, and I attended the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts to study acting after high school because I wanted to be a Shakespearean actress. Not your average gopher, yet here I am. By the end of this talk, I hope you would have come to the same conclusion that I have. Anyone, even a British liberal arts major who once aspired to be an actress, then an academic, and then a journalist can become a gopher. This talk outlines my motivations and struggles to learn to code and achieve Go competencies during my first year working at the New York Times with the help of several wonderful Go gurus. So, the moment it all began. As I mentioned, I work in product management, and my team was working on refactoring our backend from PHP to Go at the beginning of 2019. Wanting to be able to understand the many debates around how to go about this work that my engineers kept having, as well as wanting to gain a degree of credibility with my tech team, and also because I'd always wanted to dive into that wonderful world of web development, I enrolled myself in a 3-month, twice a week after work class for non-developers at the product school. This was a daunting challenge for someone who only a few weeks earlier to this course had gone into the Apple store, gone to the Apple Genius Bar, asking why my laptop wasn't working. The man at the counter then said that I just needed to turn my laptop off and then on again. Embarrassingly, it then worked. But more seriously, it was daunting because I had not started learning from zero for a very long time. Following high school, it was about deepening my knowledge of areas I already knew a lot about, becoming a specialist. This was starting from practically nothing. So the course went through the basic relationships between clients and servers, as well as introducing me to a range of different languages, JavaScript, HTML, Ruby, SQL. I went into the first week thinking that this would be great. It would make me a better product manager. I could talk to my engineers in a more educated way. But from the moment I wrote that first H1 tag, I was hooked. Writing code ignited this fire in me, this excitement. I didn't just want to understand these concepts. I wanted to be able to do them. So I quickly descended into what can only be described as a Google frenzy. I looked up every word I have ever heard a developer say: Ruby on Rails, GCP buckets, spaghetti code, interface. I began Googling the basics of every language I could think of and jumping between various online tutorials. It got to the point where I was creating a JavaScript file in my text editor, writing Ruby, then trying to apply CSS styling to it, and there was some SQL commands thrown in there too. Long story short, I was making no progress. How was I going to learn how to be a software engineer when there was just so much to learn? Where did I even start? It turns out being overexcited can sometimes do far more harm than good. But the one good thing that did come out of this was that I began reaching out to my internal community at the New York Times, some of the communities of practices, the Slack channels, asking questions and meeting people over coffee to ask them questions and get their advice as to how I could start diving in and trying to learn. Another positive that came out of this was that I created an internal Slack channel called Learning to Code at NYT, which I described as a place for beginners to coding, a channel to get advice, resources, and support, and where I could bring in some of the people that I had been talking to help other newbies in the space. This channel blew up in a way I could not have expected. By the end of the first day, it had about 122 people in the channel, and I had the director of engineering email my manager and the CTO about it. We've since had some great feedback about the group, and we now have around 200 members. One of the great comments that I got was this one: learning to code at NYT feeds me in a way the Snack channel never can. You guys are the best. Of course, I was very proud of this group, but personally, I was still flailing. I still had no idea how I could move forward in my personal journey. It was at this point that I met my first Go guru, Marwan. He was a colleague at the New York Times, and he introduced me to Go. He literally seemed to eat, sleep, and breathe Go, so I thought there must be something here. He directed me to the Golang website and started going through the basic concepts. And for the first time in my frantic frenzy, something clicked. I could understand this. I really, really liked Go. Mostly because of the super cute gophers that I saw everywhere, but also because this was finally a language that I felt like I could read. Syntactically, I could understand it. So I had my language. But now I actually had to learn it. So I looked for help and support to gopherize myself in the various meetup communities I had. And it was at a Go New York City Women Who Go event that I met my next Go guru, Jonas. She taught me a new way of thinking about programming that was syntax and code second, problem first. So think of something that you want to do, a problem you want to solve, and then think about how the tools Go has provided for you can help you solve it. A function is just a thing you can do that you call when you want to do that thing. it's safe to say, after talking to Jonas, I was fiddling around with functions for about a week, non-stop. So this is my first. It was slightly narcissistic. It was a virtual friend to say hi to me, but it was something. It was coding. Now it was onto slices and maps, not to be confused with dictionaries. The irony being my first program using a map was a map of words to definitions, a dictionary map, as it were. With this next fundamental came another Go guru. Jonas introduced me to Wilkin, who was then running the Go New York City meetup. And he was actually the one who suggested the non-dictionary map to me. He also introduced me to gopher sizes. Now, the first exercises in gopher sizes is to create an online quiz. I'm embarrassed to say this is the only exercise I've done to this day, but it did result in about a month creating every single quiz I could think of. Quiz 1, quiz 2, maths quiz, longer quiz, funny quiz, Shakespeare quiz. I could go on. So having potted around with the loads of these online resources, blog posts and YouTube tutorials, I began to feel like what I really needed next was someone to teach me in a more intense period. I had really valued the various email conversations, Slacks, coffees with my various Go gurus, but they were starting to feel like they weren't quite enough for me to progress in my learning. Coincidentally, there was a Women Who Go and Go Bridges Go Fundamentals workshop coming up. So I signed myself up to attend, borrowed a Go t-shirt, wanting to fit in with the crowd, and went. It was there that I met my next Go guru, Johnny, who was running the workshop. The day felt like a real turning point for me. Firstly, because it realized I'd actually learned some stuff. I understood many of the basic concepts. But secondly, and in my opinion, more importantly, I was in a room with fellow newbies, many of whom had been coding for many, many years, but just in different languages. And they were struggling just as much as I had. This made me feel far less self-deprecating because I had been truly worried that I just wasn't smart enough to get any of this stuff because I was making such slow progress. But it also showed me how much I could learn and accomplish when I immersed myself for a few hours in Go. Following the workshop, I stayed in contact with my Go guru, and he advised that I start thinking about writing some mini projects, giving me the ability to stretch my Go legs and try out some new fun projects, some of the fundamentals. Out of this came 2 programs that I am unbelievably proud of to this day, Ping Pong and Peanut Butter. So this is Ping Pong. This is a program that I described as a program that allows you to play virtual ping pong, but in reality, as you can see, it's 2 channels printing ping and pong, one after the other to the terminal and counting how many times it did it. Secondly, this is Peanut Butter and Jelly, inspired by my favorite midnight snack, which I described as a program that makes you a virtual peanut butter and jelly sandwich and tells you how long it took. So after a series of these kind of mini projects, I was told by my Go guru that I needed to think bigger. Think of a problem that you want to solve in the real world and think of an app that you could build to solve that problem. Naturally, I turned to my first love, Shakespeare. I decided to write a program that enabled the user to choose a title and a word from the complete works of Shakespeare, and then the program would tell that user how many times it showed up in each act of the chosen work. This put all the skills I had learnt to the test. It's one thing knowing how to use the fundamentals, but it's a far different story when you have to put them all together and use them at once. After about a week obsessively coding in the morning, the evening, before and after work, as well as a few lunch breaks, I finished the program. However, 1, it only worked in the terminal, and 2, it was over 800 lines of code long, and frankly, a bit of a mess, hence why you will not be seeing screenshots of it today or ever. This is where my next Go guru came in, Bailey, who I met at a Women Who Go workshop. She advised I go through the code and look at the places where I had repeated myself and try to write functions that I could call repeatedly to clean up the code. She also advised I looked into channels and Go routines. Now, this substantially improved my code. However, I ended up going a little bit crazy with the Go routines and channels. Once I was finished, I had a total of 189 channels and Go routines. To give you an idea, this is after I took all the sonnets out. There's about 154 sonnets. Apparently, it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. I would say I'm pretty close when it comes to Go routines and channels, definitely when it comes to copy-paste. But as you can see, this caused me a lot of issues. Turning back to my first Go guru, I got a nugget of knowledge that changed everything. You can have one channel and send all the information to that one channel. The feeling of satisfaction when I deleted those 35 channels was amazing. So I'd refactored my code. I was pretty happy with where it was, but now I wanted to turn it into a usable web application that I could run on a local host. Bailey and various YouTubers were my gurus here. I looked at blogs, inspected web pages I admired, and read all the documentation I could find on the net HTTP package before diving into development. Once I finally got it working, showing up on localhost 8080, I asked my Go guru Bailey to give me a code review. I wanted her to look at my code. She asked me to put it on GitHub. Now, I'd never used GitHub before. I'd never learned about Git, branches, or anything like that. So this enabled me to step away from Go and learn some developer best practices around PRs, but I won't go into that right now. That was a whole other journey. But I did it, created my first PR, got my first review, issue report, went through the process of creating a PR and updating my app. So I had a program with its basic client-server relationship sorted. Now I needed to give it a front end. My Go gurus had all been so helpful thus far, naturally, I turned back to the Go community. It was at another meetup that I met Anthony, who did a lightning talk on the SVG package he had developed and then got coffee afterwards. He spoke to me about front and back end languages, how Go could be integrated with HTML, CSS, and really set me on the path to start creating my own front end. And it enabled me to learn 2 new languages, HTML and CSS. Now, learning HTML and CSS was easier than Go. Not because they are easier languages to learn, but because at this point I had learned not to second guess myself. Just dive in, and if you need help, ask. There are so many people around you that would be willing to help. I ended up writing a simple HTML CSS static file, as well as some inline HTML for this part. But I look forward to diving into the SVG package in the future. And this is how it turned out. My first app. This was my first big milestone in my quest to gopherize. I was so proud. I think the week that I finished this, every single person I spoke to had to have a go and go through my app. So as I moved along the road to become a gopher, I started trying to collaborate and coordinate and really contribute to my team. I took on the task of deleting data following GDPR requests, as well as attending the engineering working sessions. And I even started taking on a few minor tickets. This was my first screenshot here. It was only a 1-line change, but it was a ticket that I picked up from the queue, created a branch for, a PR that my team approved, and I got it merged and done. I also began trying to contribute more directly to the Go community. I hosted my first Go New York City meetup in November 2019, a Women Who Go Intro to Go 2-day workshop, which I helped teach in February 2020. And I now help co-lead our internal Golang group at the New York Times. I'm an event coordinator for the global GDN, and I'm a panelist on Go Time. Some of you might have heard me there. So now the big question, was it worth it? Is it still worth all my time and energy to continue my quest to gopherize? This journey has been wonderful thus far, filled with challenges to overcome, wonderfully welcoming people, and helpful resources to turn to. However, it was and continues to be extremely challenging for a number of reasons. Firstly, because writing Go or any kind of software engineering isn't my job. Therefore, I can't dedicate the amount of time I want to it. Secondly, there is the crippling imposter syndrome. I have no computer science background. I stopped taking maths at 16, and I have this image in my brain of what a software engineer is that, frankly, I just don't fit with. And there are many times that I've doubted myself. I've literally cried because I didn't understand something. I came to New York from London with no real community, no friends, no family. I did my master's at Columbia, built up a community there, but then everyone left when we graduated. I then started a new job and began trying to build a community there, trying to find my people. But it wasn't until I found the Go community that I really got that sense that these could be my people. This was a community that I wanted to invest my time in being a part of. Hence the tears when I had those moments of doubt, because I was terrified of losing that feeling of belonging. It has been these moments that have reminded me just how valuable the Go community and my Go gurus are to me. They encourage me to carry on, not give up, and helped give me those action items, those next steps to help me progress in my career and progress in my learning. Now, I'm going to take a few moments for the veterans in the room, the potential Go gurus. I want to talk to you a little bit about why I was so grateful for the way that the Go gurus that I had helped me, and more notably, how they helped me. Throughout my journey, I've spoken to a lot of colleagues and friends, brilliant developers who expressed the desire to help others to learn code, but they didn't know how to do it, or they worried that they wouldn't be any good at helping others or teaching them. What I would say to those who are watching, who are willing and want to help newbies, first, thank you. And secondly, don't worry if you don't feel like you're any good at teaching, just by giving up some of your time to let someone talk through a problem that they're experiencing, a concept that they're struggling with, or just sitting next to them and helping them debug something, you're making a huge difference. Some of the most beneficial conversations I've had with my Go gurus have not been me sitting and listening to them, writing notes. It's been me trying to figure out a problem with them, talking it through with them, asking them questions, and then having my guru lead me in the right direction. So this is my first top tip to you Go gurus. Don't just tell your newbie the answer, guide them, help them come to the conclusion themselves. A simple example of this is the following. This is something I did myself. So when newbie me came to my Go guru asking why was this not working, I didn't understand what the issue was. It looked great to me. My Go guru could have just turned to me and said, Angelica, you just need to remove the string after the bracket. However, although this would have made me very happy, I would have run my program, it would have worked, all would have been great. I wouldn't have understood why it wasn't working, and inevitably, I would have ended up seeing this issue again later. Instead, my Go guru first asked me to hover over the area highlighted in red and read the error out loud. Missing return at end of function, and then had me explain line by line what the function I was creating was doing. This is a function called greetMe that takes a string, which I have chosen to call name, and returns a string, which will be the program saying hello to whatever name I give it. In this case, Angelica. My Go guru then asked me what I meant by return and what the program meant by return. This is where the learning came in. Through this conversation, I realized the program wasn't returning anything to the user. It was printing a statement in the terminal. Therefore, that was why the second string wasn't needed. It would have been far easier for my Go guru to just tell me the answer. However, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to really feel like I'd worked it out myself and truly understand how the function was working. So this is the first top tip. Guide your newbie, but don't tell them the answer. Let it be a guided process where they feel like they're working it out themselves. Also, this may not be the case for everyone, but I found reading out my code line by line when there was an issue crazy helpful, especially when debugging. Second top tip is when you're working with one mentor or perhaps a small group, someone who's new to the language or a junior developer on your team, whoever it is, assume they know nothing and then start out where their knowledge is from there. So what I mean by this is explicitly state at the beginning of a conversation with, for example, a newbie, I'm going to assume you know nothing and start from the absolute basics so that I can see where you're at and start from there. Do you understand the relationship between a client and a server and the difference between front and back end languages? So this is great because it enables your mentee to feel empowered to tell you what they do understand. It's a positive affirmation of their knowledge. And it also mediates that fear of them having to ask stupid questions because they've begun speaking to you at a level that they feel comfortable at. In keeping with this, something that I really appreciated whenever I was working with a Go guru, even if I was working with them for a few months and we knew each other pretty well, if I encountered an issue, a bug, they would always check in with me on the basics before diving into debugging. So, for example, they'd say something like, okay, Angelica, the error that you're encountering has something to do with this pointer. Do you feel like you still have a good grasp of pointers, or do you want me to explain the basic concept for you now, and then we can dive into your specific issue? I really appreciated this. My third and final tip is to try and keep your mentee moving forward. This might be setting check-ins to talk every week over coffee or Zoom, or maybe you send each other email updates. This is great for two reasons. Firstly, because it gives your mentee that feeling that they are truly supported. They have someone that they can reach out to whenever they have issues, and they have regular touch points to check in with you. Secondly, it incentivizes them to keep learning and making time to progress. This is especially important for people like myself who are learning Go or other languages in their free time. Because if I have a check-in with my mentor every Friday, I don't want to check in with them every week and they ask me, have you made any progress? And I just twiddle my thumbs and say no. I'm incentivized to move forward. The next level of this is to kind of set deadlines and set homework almost for your mentees. This is great for people like me. I love homework and clear deadlines, but this is really going to be a case-by-case basis. I could go on and on about all the great things that my Go gurus did for me. They saved me from giving up many times, but I'll leave it at that for now. The main thing is just to be there for them. Being a sounding board for their ideas, someone to turn to for guidance, someone they can vent to when they're frustrated or don't understand something. As I said, I've become very frustrated and cried a lot over Go, more than I'd like to admit. And it was my Go gurus that made me feel like that was okay. Frustration is normal when you're learning something new. Some great resources that I found helpful to go through with my Go gurus were Go Playground, Go Wiki, Go Tour, Go for Sizes, as well as attending Go conferences together and watching old Go conference talks and then talking them through together, going through the content video by video, and then kind of seeing whether it was something I understood, if I had more questions. This was really valuable. So not only have I met some aspiring Go gurus who wanted to help people learn, I've also met many people wanting to build a more diverse, welcoming community of gophers. And to them, I have given one top tip, and that is to talk to as many people as possible in your local development communities, at work, meetups you attend, parties you go to, about what Go has given you. Paint a picture of the wonderful community we have and literally say, anyone is welcome of all levels, experiences. It's a community that will support you no matter what stage of your life or career you're at. That's what I've been doing. And slowly but surely, I've brought some brilliant women, minorities, and underrepresented individuals into this community simply by being honest about what Go has given me, as well as identifying myself as someone willing to help and answer any questions they have. This goes hand in hand in trying to change not just the stereotypical perception of what it means to be a gopher, but a software engineer in general. Now, I know that was a lot. So if you only take 3 things away, all you aspiring Go gurus, let them be this. 1, offer to help whenever possible, in whatever way the individual needs. A study buddy, someone to bounce ideas off of, someone to go over the PRs, or just someone to turn to when they feel frustrated. 2, don't tell your newbie the answer. Guide them and help them come to the conclusion themselves. And 3, use your voice. Just by stating out loud, the Go community is open to anyone. We welcome anyone. You can make a huge impact in the way people perceive the community. And if you say it enough, maybe we can make it a reality. Turning back to you aspiring gophers and Go newbies, here are your 3 takeaways. 1, truly anyone can be a gopher. It doesn't matter your background or how technical you think you are. If you get that rush of happiness, that fire in your belly, that excitement learning Go, you can do it. Secondly, it's not going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. It's going to be hard work, but I promise you it will be worth it in the end. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for help from anyone and everyone. You are surrounded by Go gurus willing to help, your colleagues, your teammates, the people talking at this event. My first Go conference was Gotham Go in 2019. I saw Johnny Bursica speak, emailed him right afterwards, and we got virtual coffee. I then chatted to him as a mentor, as a Go guru. My first conversation with him began by me asking, what's a variable and how do I get it to print to the terminal? In fact, what even is a terminal? My most recent conversation with him was as a fellow panelist on Go Time. So I hope you found this whistle-stop tour at least moderately entertaining and helpful. I hope you've seen that my Go gurus along the way have been essential in me feeling motivated to keep going, not giving up, as well as having the confidence to push forward. And for all you non-newbies, you truly can change someone's life by helping them along their Go journey and being a Go guru just willing to help. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Angelica. That was a really inspiring journey, really interesting story that you have. Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing it with our community. So a couple of questions that I have personally.
Sure.
So you mentioned a lot about Go Gurus. So yeah, I was wondering if someone out there if you have any tips or advice for people who are looking for mentors. So I think earlier you were sharing that most of them you attended community events and then you reached out to them for virtual coffee or you met them afterwards. So yeah, maybe to someone who is looking for a mentor to help them grow even more in their skills, what are some tips you have?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that's the first thing. Like you attend meetups, you see people talk. That is a very clear, like open door to email them. So I know there's like an apprehension. Maybe there's someone in the community you admire, you like, but you don't want to just like send them a Slack or an email with no reason. So what I always do is if I've seen someone talk at a meetup, or even honestly, if there's someone I admire on Twitter or something like that, I'll maybe like watch a YouTube video of a past Gopher conference they've done. And then I'll email them saying, hi, I'm Angelica. I watched your conference talk. I found it really interesting. I would love to grab coffee with you to talk more about this topic. You then have the coffee, get to know them. And then honestly, it kind of evolves from there. At the end of my coffees, I usually will say very honestly, like, I'm very new to Go, but I would love to learn from you. Can we maybe set up bi-weekly coffees for half an hour to chat through a few questions I have, a few concepts? Some people will then just have, informal coffees every few weeks, and I'll just ask them random questions that are on my mind. And some, honestly, I'll start talking to them, and then I'll ask, would you mind if we set up a little bit more of a formal teaching schedule? People like Johnny, or others who already do teaching in the community, I say like, hi, I would love to be a guinea pig. I would love to kind of practice learning from any new material you're thinking of putting together. And then it kind of evolves from there. But I would say that's the tip. Like, really, don't feel apprehensive about reaching out to anyone you might think of as being a possible Go guru. Just find an excuse, like find a YouTube video they've done, even if it's like 10 years ago. And just like, hey, I came across your video, loved it. Always start with a compliment, and then, hey, let's grab coffee.
Wow, yeah, that's really great tips. Thanks for sharing. And back to your personal journey, right? So if you could redo it all over again, like I think earlier you were sharing that you were learning a lot of different languages, and then you came across people. Yeah, so if you could just redo it, what would you do differently? Or what are some advice you have for people out there who might not have programming background, but they are interested to learn?
So honestly, and this is more difficult to do than it is to be just like say it now, but just diving in and being far more confident in being new. So now I'm very open when I don't know things. I'm like, I'm new, I don't know this, please help. But at the beginning, I think, and this touches a little bit on the imposter syndrome, because, I was a product manager working at the New York Times, I was, pretty good at what I did. The idea of then having to admit, like, I don't know this was scary. And that is very scary, especially if you're, we're in a competitive world where, very ambitious people. I think if I could do it again, I would have been more honest and open about, like, I know nothing, please help. Because I think I would have then got Go gurus much earlier on. That being said, that lesson in itself, just like learning that it's okay to be new and not know stuff, was hugely valuable. And so I guess I'm kind of going back on the answer. Like I wouldn't change it because I learned that, and I think that's a great lesson to learn.
Wow. And Stanley also asked a question. So earlier you said everyone had to have a go.
Yes. Stanley is the reason I'm here, so I will answer any. Everyone had to have a go. Yeah, it was intended. I'm glad you picked up on that. Some of my jokes are funny. Some of them are touch and go.
Touch and go. I caught that. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking your time to share with our community. I think it's like nearly past midnight from where
2 a.m.
Wow. I think, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was absolute pleasure. And honestly, if there's anyone on the call who would like to chat, I can't say I'm the most brilliant Go guru, but I will be a fellow Go newbie and happy to chat with anyone here. My Twitter's there, also my email's there. Feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to chat too.
Thank you so much. So I think now we'll hand it over to Karen, our third speaker for the day.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. Wow. I was just so moved with everyone's presentation, especially of Angelica's. So for my talk, we are going to discuss about reports generation using Go. So a little about me. Hello, I am Karen Matala. I am the CTO of OneExport.net, and I am a lead at Women Who Code Manila. We emerged as champion from the last Startup Weekend for Women 2018, and I have been a Go developer for 2 years now. And many of us maybe discovered their green thumb while stuck at home. So I am a plantita. So let's have a code plan in order to execute this generation of report. So number one essential thing is to find a database. A database can be like maybe MySQL or some Excel sheet or an CRM. And the number two is actually opening our IDE. And third would be forking this GitHub repository. So let's head on to that. And number four is don't be afraid to fail and learn. So I would echo Angelica's point wherein you just need to dive in and don't be afraid to fail. So to the computer. So let me just head on to the GitHub repository. Oh, so wait. For the user and database plan, so again, it can be a MySQL or an Excel sheet. So it is important to have a goal in mind, who your end user is for the report. So it can be the sales team or the marketing team. And then make sense of the important fields and columns. So on opening your code environment, you have to set up your Golang. So if you haven't downloaded it, it's pretty straightforward for Windows and Linux or Unix systems. You just have to be cautious on the Go path variable. So let's head on to the GitHub repository right now. There. So this is the GitHub repository. It's very easy to follow the README, right? But and then run it. It's best practice to have a README. But then what I would like to have this session is actually have the fundamentals and really learn to traverse this, right? And then it has 7 commits, which I think 5 is the most core. So we had a code plan of the database extraction of data. So let's expect that there is a need for database connection. So I made this folder. So observe the file structure of your repository or your code base. So you would have there a database connection, and then the export would be the export action or some build or transformation of export file, and then the task. So the database fields that we would have would be maybe a to-do app. So this is going to be a task table. And then some utility. Utility can be like the OS or operating configuration. So the other files, so .env.example is you can replicate this as your .env, and then git ignore for your ignoring some default files, and then go.mod. So I would echo the first presenter, Mitali, for go module versioning. So we will touch on that in a bit, and then some go.sum, and then the main entry point is the main.go. So of course the readme.markdown, and then the two app MySQL file. So let's head on to the commits. So the very first commit is at the bottom. And if we click on here, so the commit description is we set up go.mod for local package importing. Oh. So you can see here the .env.example. So this is like your template. We can practice here. I recommend going through the 12factor.net practice. So 12factor.net, it's a website or a document you could easily access right now. So this only tells you the best practices of the other developers or engineers out there that has built software as a service. And one of the pillars there is the config. So this section would say that it requires a strict separation of config from the code base. So that's why we are doing this .env file, that example. So when you fork this configuration or this GitHub repository, you will need to have like a .env file, and then you can see here. Yeah, yeah. sorry, I thought my screen. You can see here I have a key value pairs. I have here a key of app env equal to local. So let's assume that this is going to be a production, a staging environment, or a local environment. And then I have this host part, and of course our database connection. So you have here a username database, what is the password of that database, and then what is the address, and then some port. And then of course for our app, we have like a to-do app. And then these AWS keys, you can ignore it for now, but we just had a service that, generates a file, and then after it generates a file, it would upload to a AWS S3 bucket. But for now, let's skip to that. And then of course the .git ignore file. So it comes to surprise that some developers forget about this file. So tendency is they upload like the whole node modules folder, which is really big, but that's okay. At least you get to iterate or learn about it. Yeah. So now you can see here like an asterisk. That's like a wildcard, and then the file name. So .exe. So it would ignore all files that has a file type of .exe. And then the SSL certs. So let's not include that because we don't want anyone, just in case, to hack our servers. This is a very sensitive folder or file. And of course, our .env, we wouldn't want to commit that. It would break the 12-factor out. And then some IDE cached settings. And of course, our .xl file. So this go.mod, it's my first time actually to understand it in depth a while ago because of Mitali, right? Because I think that's just how I work or my friends work, the developers work. You just have to, you see this video tutorial, you follow it, and if it makes it work, then great, right? If the video tutorial said it's the best practice, okay, cool. Now I will just do it. But because of what Mitali said, now I know that, oh, I'm actually using Go module versioning, and I'm actually using the semantic versions. And there's a benefit on using semantic versions and the pseudo versioning, right? So that's really good to hear code gurus or go gurus, because at the end of the day, I don't know everything, but just try to be curious always. So go.mod, this file serves as your Go module dependency guide. So if you have written code from PHP, it's like your composer.json. And then on JavaScript, it's like your package.json. So when you invoke go get, it would install dependencies coming from this file. And so the main.go, so going on the directory. So imagine that this is your IDE. So the root folder and then the root file is main.go. So it would execute, or that would be the entry point. So for every language, there's an entry point file. So this would be it. And then you have here the package main. So package is, I would say it's like the directory or the folder, and then it is on the main. So now we have some dependencies to import. So FMT or format. So it's a standard library out of the box. And then I have here my repository, if you could see, Karen Irene Cano, and then my repository name. So this would be your custom local package. It needs to be on the Go mod file. So let's see now. So it is here module and then my GitHub repository. This would enable you to actually reuse files or separate files into folders, because it could get a little bit messy if it's all in the same folder. But yeah, as you progress, it gets big. So now we have here a function. So it's func, main, and then some starting and closing brackets. And then I just have to POC, or proof of concept, trying to learn Go. Uh, some format, print line, hello. And now you can see a utility and then a dot and then a setup function. So if you could traverse that, you will find the instances of utility coming from this line of code. So expect that you will find a utility folder or a utility file. And then inside of that file, you would expect something like a setup function. I don't think there's IntelliSense in GitHub, or it's only on master branch. But I remember when I click and hover, there's a feature in GitHub one time. Yeah. Okay. And then some README. So again, it's best practice to actually have a README so that your code developers know how to set it up. And then another file would be the environment.go. So you see here, it's under the folder of utility, and then the file name is environment.go. So meaning to say, as long as they are on the same folder, as long as they are on the same package, across different files, you can access that. But do note, there's a thing, a format in Go, like if the function name is a small letter, it is only accessible within that Go file. But then if it's on a capital letter, it is accessible like global. So this function, we need to set up our keys and value pairs. Observe that the function name, yeah, starts with a capitalized letter. So I just POC'd the idea of, what does even a local or a global scope function mean? So while I was doing this, I would run the code and it would break things. And it's all right, because when you break things, you tend to fail fast and recover fast and just try to learn. So that's the first commit. I was just simply again going back to the main.go. I was printing text and then just trying to try out things. So on the next commit, so now you create your file referencing env file, and then setting up the operating system environment variables. So the goal in mind is I really need to access the database because I want dynamic data, right? So I need to connect to the database. So now, all right, on the main.go, you would need to say set it to the operating system environment. So maybe the idea is, I would imagine I need a way to access the key of the database username, but it's coming from a file, right? A.env. So that kind of flow is already your coding plan, right? So, okay, I need to access that file. So how do I do that? So going back to your utility, your environment.go, the beauty of Go is that you can actually import libraries as you type. There's an IntelliSense package in VS Code that you can download. And then if that package is or library is not used, Go would actually have an error that, hey, you didn't use this package, I'm going to delete it. So going back on the setup, so now we have to really manipulate and access the env file. So as you can see here, um, I have this comma error syntax wherein I have a function called get CWD. CWD is like a current working directory of a string, or this .env references and assumes that you have copy and pasted the template, right, as .env file. So if you forgot that step, you might have an error, and then that's okay. You can always mend it as you go. So basically, this code would say that, okay, it would log the error. Hey, Karen, you forgot to create that .env. And then if it has no error, we go read the file. All right, I have read the file. It exists. Now what? So you have to manipulate the key value pairs and then understand how it is patterned. So going back to our .env example, going back, so um, understand how the pattern goes. So you have here maybe an equal sign as your delimiter for the key value pairs, and then a /n or the next line. So that would mean another pair. So this is the code for that. Like I have a delimiter of a \n, and then I would split it up with equal sign. It's like explode or implode in JavaScript or PHP. And then as I loop over it, I would set it to the environment on the operating system level so that later on I could pick it up or get it. Sometimes I have an error. So before I actually made this function, I had a lot of errors. Like sometimes there are dirty data that I wasn't able to catch, like there's a space. So, and then there's a space or another underscore, but you will have those spikes of mistakes, and the secret is to just expect that you will have those spikes and you will have those plateaus, and just dive to it and go back to the goal. There. Okay, so this is the setup, and then now you have set it up on the environment. Yeah. Oh, right. So the get CWD function, by the way, is just really checking if that file path string exists. Right. If not, it would throw the error. So OS has some pre-built functions which you could refer. Okay. So going back on the main.go, so you just have to POC again. All right. Can I now really get a key and then get the value of it, because you will be using it everywhere. So now that is set up, now you can access your .env file. Let's try accessing our database. Okay. So on the database folder, I created this connection.go. So I have here a package database, and then I imported some of the libraries like some TLS because we have some SSL certs. So we needed those libraries, but essentially the important part here, if you don't have SSL, is the SQL and the IOUtil, and then of course the OS. Um, Still, we need to import our local packages, right? So you will need like this Go MySQL um, utility folder, because we will be reusing some functions from there. And also you can see here we are using a driver. So the Go SQL driver for MySQL. Then we have this variable which we will also use as we progress. And then for the DB instance, you will see I explicitly have a capital letter here. And also, I think I read a somewhat a standard that if there's an acronym, it should be like DB. So if it's an ID, it's not going to be like capital I and then small d. It should be like all caps ID. So yeah, just to share. So function DB instance, and then a pointer of sql.db. So the very gist of this code is primarily to have some connection to your database. So I used here a env called app env. So we have this production SSL. So now on your .env, if you're going to deploy it somewhere, uh, you have to make sure that your app env is equal to production SSL if that's what you want to uh, compare, right? Because again, we are using SSL certs. And then now you can see I used here utility that gets CWD. Now, this became a big letter um, because I had to reuse it. So let's expect that there's a commit here that I change the utility get function, get CWD as capital letter. There, this was the commit. So before, it was a small letter. Now I made it to a big letter because I had to use it globally. There. So I needed some client cert functions and then reference it. So we had some PEM files, some key files, CA certs. I honestly cannot explain to you what these preloaded functions say. I just happened to make it work, but you can navigate to the library link right here and let me know. But in a nutshell, I think it just deciphers the CA certs and make sure that there's no man in the middle attacks. Yeah. Okay. And then essentially, if you are not going to use a SSL cert, just navigate on getting your simple DB username and then password or the port. So maybe it's somewhat a AWS MySQL instance. You get that endpoint, and then you get that username and password, and then the thing is your settings in AWS RDS should be public. But yeah. So now when everything is set up, um, you will have your DB connection. So of course, all right, this seems to do the job, but how do I even know if it's working? That's why we are going to have to POC it. I would also like to touch that this is what Mitali mentioned. It's like the semantic versioning. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you have a major and minor releases. Just go that some. I'm not sure what this is yet, but it seems like it's like the package lock JSON and the composer JSON lock, wherein it maybe if you could go get it would specifically just get this. So it's like the pseudo version, maybe. Let me know on the comments. Okay, let me just try to search for the main.go. Well, I guess the execution of main.go is not here. Let's go go on the other commits then. Add in our database. Is this, are you the one? No, we're done in that. Oh, this commit is just making this string into a rune because essentially this is a integer or yeah. There. So on our main.go, we need to reference the task folder. Now, on the task folder, I would have a get all by user. So let's head on to the um, task folder. So on the task folder, I have like a file called task.data.go and another would be the task.go. So the difference is that on the task.go, it holds that task struct. So again, I have this package task. It would mean that it's on the same folder. So a struct is a collection of data fields with declared data types. So I just have to declare the columns or the fields from the database that I would um, reference here. So I have a type task and then a struct. So an opening and a closing, and then I would use a ID. It is an integer JSON ID, serves as the primary key of the task table. I would use a user ID, and then reference foreign key from a user table, owner of a specific task. Again, context is this is like a to-do app. And then I have a title, a short one title, and then is it complete, boolean, and then this would be the name of the table or the name of the column. And then a created at on the table, it is named like this one, created underscore at, and then updated at, and then it has an underscore here. Now that you have that struct, you would have this task.data.go. So you would have here the functions where there can be like the queries you could do coming from the database. So you can see here, I had an import where I reference the database folder. So I could get the functions in there. And then get all by user ID, take in a user ID, and get all its task. So when you observe this, it is on capital letter. And then I pass in a user ID variable and its data type. Hold on. Yeah. And then this parenthesis here is actually the output data type. At first, of course, I'm coming from a PHP background engineer. So at first it was like, what is this? Is this like a use function? Is it like a callback function? So there's like a return type hinting in Go, which is very strict, right? And unlike PHP, it's not. But in PHP 8, there's already that. But yeah, that's for another conversation. And then I just have this inherit the data type declaration. So I have a DB, and then I just get the DB instance referencing from that file import. And then I have this query. So this query will have the select star wildcard from the task table where user ID, the column name, is this query or question mark. So that query is now passed here. And then the db.query. So there's a documentation you can follow that is used on the database package. And anything after this comma, so let's say you have another parameter to pass in, right? Another question mark, you just add it here because it uses an interface. So it's like an argument interface. So you just have to comma separate it. And then this defer db.close, essentially just before the function closes or is done, it would close the database. So we have to close when you open it. We have to close it for that specific time. And then error, to catch the error if there's something wrong here, maybe a typo. I had that. And then all right. So now, of course, now that you have this query, and then assuming that it's all working, no errors, you would want to display it somewhere. And then the syntax on the documentation is that, okay, let's assign it on the results variable here. This is a comma OK syntax. So if it succeeds, it goes to this results, and then if not, it goes to not OK. So now, so results that next, it's a function, pre-built function, and you're in the for loop. So for each row, you will have to assign or build this instance. Like you have this var task. If you could remember the task.go we built, the structure. Now, on every results that scan, you reference the task that ID, and then the user ID, the title, and then for every field that you need. So the positioning of the columns should be the same that of the select query above. It should also follow the struct succession, because when I didn't follow it, like maybe I just put this at the top, it didn't work. So I just followed it. So yeah. And then now, where do I actually allocate it? Because I would need to maybe parse it or transform it to a much more insightful form. So I created this list or a slice, I would say. I'm I'm a bit confused on slice, arrays, and list, but there's a good documentation in Go, um, which you could have, which you can execute code immediately. So I think this is the list. If I'm not, no, a slice of task struct. Now you will have to append it there, this task instance on the task. All right, and then just return the task. If none, it would return nil. Okay, now let's look for the execution part of that, the implementation. So you can see here, this is the main.go. All right, we have set up the utility, and now I would like to use the function that I just created. So remember that you required a user ID, which is an integer. Now for this session, we will just hard code it. But as what would Angelica explained a while ago, they had a web app, which you can actually do. Like there's a package that you can just plug in play within Go, and then have it pass by request. But for now, let's just hard code it. So you see here a variable user ID, the name of the variable, and then the date type is 2. So it would assume that you have a ID of 2 on the users table, and maybe you would want a number 2 of user ID on the task, just to POC that there is a result. Now, this is again a comma, okay? So if everything works, you will see a printed task, a slice of task. All right. So now you can query, right? So you can manipulate data coming from the database. So the goal again is to actually export it to Excel. So let's try. Let's see how we will be able to do that. 7 change files and 67 additions. All right. Now, we have this export package, the export folder, and then the export.go. Let's just try to traverse everything for now. So you have the row names already, like the headers. Now we will be needing to have a dependency or the library called Excelize, version 1.4.1. So I think this go.sum is really automatic out of the box. And then on the main.go, the execution part. So it would have the export.build already. So let's go back to it later on. And then I made this as a collection now. And then I just removed this. All right. Okay. Now on the export.go, so again, it's on a separate folder. So we just have to reiterate that it would have a package that package export, and then our dependencies again is xlize, and then the task. So again, if you could remember, we have a struct of task. Now I passed here the task collection. So a while ago, I renamed it not anymore as a slice, but as a collection because I needed more flexibility. So I passed it as a parameter, and then now this function would build the Excel file. Now I needed to have the headers, so A1 to E1. So those are the columns, and then the headers. So the first column would be the task ID, the title, is it completed, and then created at, updated at. Now, the goal in mind is that, okay, maybe I am a manager, and then I would need what titles is completed or not. And then I would ask to mark the is completed to be a yes or a no versus like a one or zero, right? Because it's not humanly friendly or readable. Now, on executing this, we would need to create a new file, and then for loop on the headers, and then just put this headers. So I just POC'd like what does it look like, and then for loop on appending a row. Now I have here a function. So maybe let's go through that function. So it's a small letter because I believe it's going to be just used within this file for now. So append every row. We can add styles if needed because this is an Excel file, depending on the requirement of your boss or your stakeholders. And then we just pass in these arguments like a file, XLS file data type, and then the index because again, remember that we have a for loop and a task collection. Maybe you'd like to access that. And then the output would be the file writer XLS file because essentially we would want to output it. So now we have this data manipulation. So I have here a +2 mainly because the headers is not counted. So I think I changed this to 1, but yeah. So the headers is like the 1 on the Excel file, not on arrays because on arrays it's like the 0, right? I think on the Excel file it's literally 1, so I had to add 2. I think it's really 1. Yeah. Now we just have to set the cell value from the sheet 1, and then I have here a sprintf, so like manipulation of the string. So on A1, like percent sign V or value. So again, this is an index. So um it would it would manipulate it to, let's say, A1 and then B1. And then you can see here that I could access easily the property. So I am accessing on the first column the ID, the title, and then here you would see I have a manipulation that if it's completed equal to true or equal to 1, I would yield or have it rendered as a yes rather than just a 1 or 0. So basically, this would append every time, append on the Excel file. And then finally, um, the file name is, maybe you could name it differently, but for now it's task.xlx, and then save it on on the temp folder as task.slx. If there's an error, it would throw it. Now, where is the execution part? So this is a global name function. So let's go back to main.go. Now we just have to call it from there. So export, so as expect that it is already there, and then dot build, that function we just created, and then pass in the task. Okay, we are so near. I think we are done because essentially that's the final part, and I just updated the README. But let's see the final file of main.go. So essentially, this is our final main.go, wherein you have to set up your global environment keys coming from your .env, and then find a way to have a connection from your database, and then query some data, let's say from your to-do app, the task table, and then maybe filter it by user ID, and then build the export file. Oh, there's the IntelliSense. Now, this build function file does the manipulation, the data manipulation, the formatting, and it does the saving of the export file. So let's see if how does that look. Hold on for a bit. So now it would look like this. So let's say it is already completed, it's a yes, and then our database has some titles in it. So now I hope you learned something from generating reports. And as I will go back now on my presentation, and yes, I'd like to thank Google Developer Space, Women in Tech, Jenny Stan, Lim Giasin, and GoSG Tech Tune. And you can actually access this presentation here on this bit.ly link. And do we have any questions? Thank you. Hello.
Hey, Teck Chun, you're on mute.
You're on mute, sorry.
I'm not sure if he knows.
Oh, sorry, I'm on mute. Sorry. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, thank you, Karen, for sharing and very detailed walkthrough. Thanks very much for walking us through your code. There's only one question. Yes, I think you've already answered that. The link to your public repository. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think GoSG is. I also want to thank Abel and Stanley for putting this together. Yeah, and let's see. Is there any more questions on the floor? Ah, okay. There seems to be none, but okay, no problem. You can always reach out to Karen if you have questions, and I think you can download and git code the repo, and maybe send in your PR to Karen if you have any questions. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Karen, again. And I think the other two speakers have already logged off because it's late night. But thank you once again for staying with us throughout Saturday. Thank you very much. And we hope to see you again in April very soon. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chia Xing. Thank you, Abel. And thank you, Stanley. All right.